keep an eye on what your equipment costs you versus, what, or at least what you're charging for it on your bids, against your hours of usage. What is going on, guys? Chris Work here on ProfitDig, ProfitDig.com. Here this evening with Jeff Givens, partner Jeff Spencer. Well, you're both partners, actually. I didn't mean like one partner over another, yeah. But anyway, thank you for joining us on the ProfitDig Construction Show. How's it going, fellas?
Good.
Fantastic. Yeah. We had a topic that we were discussing prior to producer Jerry recording us here. And I'm honest with you guys, I don't remember what the hell we were talking about. So
it's all right.
Too many Miller Lights.
Yeah.
2 Miller Lights. Thank you very much.
Miller Lights.
This is sponsored by Miller Lights. So Miller Brewing, give me a call. You can reach me at info@profitdig.com. All right, so how's it going, guys? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking about rental equipment versus owning your own equipment.
That's right.
And I was asking Jeff, if you're out there starting a new company, obviously you want to own as much as you can.
Sure.
But how do you prioritize different equipment or tools or things that you'll need to accomplish your job? Like, sure, the more you own over time, the better, but you can't just own everything at once.
No. And when does it make sense? Yeah.
Well, and as far as your tools go, like, your hand tools, your transits, your total stations, your levels, whatever that may be, I would recommend trying to buy those up front, get those and have them on hand. But if you're just starting out, trying, I would always recommend rent your equipment, your big equipment, your excavators, your dozers, your loaders, stuff of that nature, rent them to start out. And the reason being is like, if things go south in a hurry, you're not tied to a note that you can't pay.
Sure.
Rental equipment, you can turn it in, you rent it today, you can turn it in tomorrow.
That's true.
Yeah.
And, all you owe is that 1 day rental. If you sign on the dotted line to buy that piece of equipment, you're tied. If you buy a $500,000 dozer, you've got to pay for that.
It's your dozer.
It's yours. Yeah.
Or pay it.
So new guy starting out, at what point, what does that timeline look like? When should I consider purchasing?
Well, if you get a steady income coming in and you've got a decent backlog, if you starting out, you have no backlog
Sure.
for the most part. So in a year's time, you do your work, you get a name built for yourself, and you got some customers that you work for and they like to use you, and you're having, good success, bidding stuff with them. At that time, when you got, 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half, somewhere, in that neighborhood, you're going to know if you've got a steady income coming in.
Yeah.
And if it looks like, you've got guaranteed work and, you always need, roughly 100% or better of what your cost of work is. And
when you say you talking about set to the side, like your emergency fund or operating
I'm talking about on your backlog. If you've got that much work ahead of you,
Okay.
if you've, say it costs you $1 million a year to operate, and say you've got $1 million plus on your backlog, at that point, you might start thinking about one piece. Not all the pieces.
Yeah.
Let's make our first purchase. And then when you get to where if it's still costing you like $1 million, $1.5 million, $1.2 million, something like that, to operate, and you've got a $3, $4, $5 million backlog, then you might look at buying, make the purchase of 2 or 3 pieces.
Okay.
Because you can forecast that, hey, we've got income.
Yeah, it's going to be based off the backlog. The work you've got ahead, the work you've got under contract. It can't go on your backlog until you have either a notice to proceed or a contract in hand. Once you have a notice to proceed, to me, that's a legal and binding, especially if you get through an email. Don't ever accept a notice to proceed over the phone. You need something solid that you can stand behind. It's going to help you in court if you have to go to court. But if someone gives you a job, it goes on your backlog.
Okay.
So at that point, you're building your backlog. And say your fiscal year starts in January. So by June, if you've got $2 or $3 million on your backlog, that tells me by the end of the year, you're going to have $5, $6 million on your backlog. If things keep progressing.
Yeah.
So at that point, that's when, you start making a decision like, because your rental equipment is going to cost you 1.5 times per month what your payment's going to cost.
That much
Okay.
more.
Yes.
So that was my next question. So 1.5 times, so 50% markup here. All right.
Well, I guess
So if your bids and stuff are based off of rental equipment, and that's what you need to base them off of.
Yeah.
And then that's going to help you as you buy equipment, you can lower your prices a little bit and pick up more work.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
can still keep as much profit margin or even more because you're at 1.5 times. You can drop at half time and still have
to be more competitive on your business.
Or alternatively, you could be earning more on the equipment on your bid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another thing too that people don't think about is like, when you buy $250,000 to $500,000 piece of equipment, the rental companies, even if you're renting, they're going to offer you insurance through them. It's always cheaper to use your own insurance
Okay.
because theirs are elevated. They're going to make money off the
Making
insurance.
money on the rate.
Yeah.
So
good,
whatever you renting,
Yeah.
get your insurance through your insurance company. Don't take the rental company's insurance because it's going to be an elevated price.
Yeah, and I guess why you have that rental, especially if you're new to the game, you probably want to be keeping track of your operating costs. Like,
Yes.
especially if you're new to that, you may have an idea of what it's going to cost you, but until you start actually tracking that, you
Yeah.
won't know for sure.
No, and it's going to take you. You're going to get a good year under your belt before you have a good handle on your overhead, especially, and what it's going to actually cost you to operate. Because each project is going to vary in what it costs you to operate. You're going to have more labor, more equipment on this one, maybe less on this next one. So you got to figure that out. What it's going to cost you. Per project. To get a good idea of what it's going to cost you on a year end.
Okay. Well, is there, just taking a step back, just talking about, okay, when we get this backlog to a certain number, is there sort of a magic formula there? Am I thinking of like, I'm allocating X, is it just a matter of going back and saying, well, X percent of my bid involves equipment? Is that when I take that number and then does it just translate to my backlog and that's when I just sort of determine when the time is right? Or is there really no magic number? I mean,
There's really no magic number. I mean, it's like when you create that bid, you've either created that bid with rental equipment or you create that bid with equipment you own.
with you go. So
One of the two. That's the only scenarios you have.
I got you.
And, even the bigger companies out there, the 100, 150 employee companies, contractors, they may have 70, 80 pieces of equipment, 100 pieces of equipment. Well, they still may own all that equipment, but there's still going to be projects come up, because they're steadily bidding.
Right.
They may have multiple project managers in there that's cranking out bids every day.
Sure.
And they still may not have enough equipment to do the jobs that they win. So they still may have to figure in. So even if you feel like you're self-sustained, you own all the equipment you're going to need, as your company grows, you still may have to integrate some rental equipment along the way, to.
Yeah, those extreme scenarios.
Yeah.
Or if you're just really pushing.
Right, if you're
your
really
growth.
pushing, that's most of the time, if you're really pushing, it's like, I don't have enough equipment. I can pick up the men, I can find the help, but I've got to have equipment for them. I don't want to make that purchase right now because it may not be long-term. This may just be a freak deal, where I'm going to have this work for 6 or 8 months and it may drop back down to my regular schedule.
Yeah.
So, you may want to rent short-term even when you're established, and that may be a sign of growth. You may have to rent for a year or so and then make initial purchases to buy that equipment,
Right.
to keep going. But one thing to keep in mind is like, when you're figuring your equipment, you always need to figure your maintenance for cost, and you always need to figure replacement. Because, in 4 to 5 years, no matter what equipment you buy, it's going to start giving you problems. You're going to start doing maintenance on it.
Right.
So at that time, that would be a good time to say, hey, I need to figure on replacing this equipment on this year. Whether it be 3 years from now or 2 years from now or 5 years from now.
Right.
So I need to be building up some cash on hand to where I can replace this piece of equipment.
Right.
And so it's really good, to like not buy all your equipment at one time because all it's going to come due to be replaced.
Oh, yeah.
You want to buy 1 or 2 pieces, the year or two later, buy 1 or 2 more, kind of stagger to where you're not having to come up with a large sum of money to replace your whole fleet at one time.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that'd
Plus
take a
maintenance on the fleet, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sort of got me thinking over here, Jeff. And I was like, really, the new contractor could probably use a subscription to ProfitDig.com. Where you can,
Check us out.
yeah, you should probably check us out. That way you can actually, keep an eye on what your equipment costs you versus, at least what you're charging for it on your bids, against your hours of usage. So yeah, if you're looking for a good construction bidding and costing solution, please check us out at ProfitDig.com. If you don't mind, while you're here, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. If you have a question, let us know. We'll be happy to answer it. Jeff, appreciate it, boys.
Thank you, Chris.
All right,
Thank you, Chris.
guys. See you next time.
See you guys.